Turn my mic on. There we go. Gotta turn that mic on. Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3. Hello, hello. Hello, everyone. Are you receiving the signal? I hope that you are receiving the signal. Cool. All right. Hello, everyone. I know it's like 2 minutes until we get started, but I thought I might as well, I'm here, you're here, everybody's here, more or less, although I see some people are still joining. Yes, I hope everybody got the memo about where the first lecture is. Apparently, 33 of you have so far, so that's good. Excellent, excellent. So, hello, welcome. This is Computer Science 1MD3 Introduction to Programming. Welcome to the summarized version of this course, or I guess the springized, because it's the spring semester, not the summer semester. But, that's neither here nor there. We're going to learn programming in this class. It's going to be fun. We've got quite a bit to get through, so we should get started with it as soon as possible. Hello, hello. Good morning to all of you. Just before we get started with the syllabus, I'd like to just take one moment to say these are 3-hour class blocks. So hypothetically, the end of this class will be 12:20. This is the type of class that does require all of the time that it has been allotted. And there are going to be breaks. We're going to take 10 minutes every hour, or like 15 minutes in the middle, or something like that, depending on the rhythm. And we're gonna take a break in the middle of this gigantic chunk of lecture so that everybody can, go to the bathroom, grab a coffee, etc., etc. So yeah, a lot of business going on in the chat about a Discord server. There's also a Piazza message board, which we're gonna go over. We're gonna go over all this stuff imminently, so stay tuned. But essentially, we maintain a Piazza message board, which allows you reasonably direct access to the teaching assistants for this course, so that you may send them questions and receive answers. So that you can sort of get, quasi-official statements on, interpretations of questions on assignments and tests and that sort of thing. Which in the past has been extremely useful, so it's a thing that we're going to maintain. Ha! We're up to 50 people. Wonderful. So, let's just get right into it, shall we? So this is Computer Science 1MD3 for McMaster University. These lectures are unlisted, so you need to have the link through the Avenue page to be able to get them for synchronous access. But after the lecture has been terminated, they will be available for general consumption, I guess. I set the live streams to public after they occur, so if you want an archive of previous lectures that I've done for the same class, or if you want to, watch them for this class, all you have to do is log into my YouTube channel, which is, nice. It's possible that people are trying to send the link, but can't send the link through the chat, the live chat here on this. I think it blocks links on the YouTube live chat. So if you want to send each other links to things, then you're going to have to do that sort of in a different way. Actually, it would be kind of useful if somebody were to post that link to the Piazza forum, so that everybody could have access to it in the class. That would be nice, eh? So, cool. So this is introductory programming. Generally speaking, this is a class in Python programming. We are going to explore the basics of programming in general and object-oriented programming in particular through our exploration of the Python programming language, which we will, of course, cover in some depth. The idea is that you get a sufficient amount of background in Python to be able to claim some familiarity with Python on a resume or something like that. Obviously, no one course in programming in any particular programming language is going to make you an expert in that programming language, so it would be dishonest to claim yourself as such. But we're trying to give you guys an introduction to programming. Programming, of course, is as our modern lives become increasingly computerized and increasingly occurring through the medium of your computers, it turns out that computers run primarily on programs, and knowing how to program is an increasingly useful skill. I find a lot of people take this course who are looking to get into graduate studies in either the sciences or health sciences or in the business faculty as well. We get a fair number of people from the economics side of things, because it turns out that once you get into grad school, the ability to program is a reasonably, that's a hot commodity. Or, it's sort of increasingly becoming the case that that's kind of your the bar that you have to jump over to be able to get in the first place. And, this is sort of my general impressions from having talked to undergraduates, of course. You should take everything I say with a grain of salt, even when I sound like I know what I'm talking about. But, suffice to say, programming is a useful skill. And this is the approach that we take to this course as we're teaching it. This course is you can think of it as a skills course, and you can also think of it as a math course. So this is a math skills course. It turns out that programming is just one type of mathematics, as we'll get into. My general take on programming as a discipline is that it builds off of the skills that you learned in high school algebra. So the types of sort of abstractions that you need to be able to use in your brain to be able to work with variables in an algebraic sense are similar to the types of abstractions that you need to use to be able to work with, variables in a programmatic or algorithmic sense, which, we're going to get into, of course. I'm not expecting you guys to know everything about programming from this little blurb of mine before we even get into the syllabus, but I'm just trying to give you some impression of what you might expect with this course. So let's see. Do we have any questions? Mm-hmm. Cool. All right. So, my name is Nicholas Moore. I am a doctoral candidate in the Faculty of Computing and Software at McMaster University. I am, your instructor. I've been teaching this course for, I believe since the summer of 2019, so a few years now, in a reasonably continuous fashion. So this should be a reasonably well-settled course. I'm not going to be trying out a lot of new things on you guys. But, that being said, it's been I haven't had a whole lot of time between last semester and this semester to get things set up, so things are kind of still quasi not quite set up. But that's okay, because this is the first week and nothing's due this week. It's next week when things become actually due, we expect like assignments to start getting worked on and that sort of thing. So we've got some time. just, chill. Go with the flow. Everything will be cool, But, that if it seems like things aren't quite 100% together, it's because I had my last exam, like, Wednesday of last week, and I've been just trying to close off one version of this course and open up another one at the same time, and it's just, just a whole lot of stuff. So, we have 3 TAs for this course this semester. Mark, David, and Sarthak. We are going to have office hours. Each of the TAs is going to have office hours this semester. I'm also going to have office hours. My office hours are Thursday at 10:30, 10:30 to 11:30. I believe we had been talking about setting the office hours for the rest of these guys at 4 to 5 o'clock, something like that. It's still a little bit up in the air, so it could be a little bit negotiable. But, office hours will be a thing. Here are the important websites. We've got the YouTube channel, whereupon you can view the live stream lectures. If you are listening to this, then you have correctly and adequately found it. If you haven't found it, then, you probably aren't hearing this. Avenue, obviously. We're using Avenue for the distribution of the lecture slides. This is where your sort of master grade book is. So the version of your grades that you see in Avenue is your official version. As you'll see, we are using some number of third-party sort of servers to... well, third-party is not quite saying it correctly. We use a server administered by the Computing and Software Department in order to distribute the assignments. So, we're still in the process of getting that set up, but that'll be the way that occurs. But yeah, generally speaking, Avenue will be your first point of contact. The links to the lectures will be posted at the beginning of the week on the Avenue announcements feed, so that's where you shall get your links to be able to view these things, so that's good. We also have Piazza. So Piazza is... that's the message board that I was talking about. Let me see. Is anybody actually talking to me here? Pretty much everybody's just trying to get onto the Discord, I see. Cool. So the purpose of this chat is also to ask me questions. So use it for that purpose too, please. Piazza. So, yes. So this is Piazza. This is a forum for the sending of questions and the answering of questions. It's pretty cool, I have to say. I guess we can see what last semester's looks like. So the general way that it works is you, the student, post a question, right? Then the instructors, that is to say, myself and the TAs, sort of collaboratively put together answers to the questions that you, the students, ask. Students are also able to answer other students' questions over these forums. That's what the little S means, it means a student has answered this question. The question and the answer mechanisms are fully anonymized if you so choose, so you don't have to worry about looking like a big dummy for answering a big dumb for asking a big dumb question. Although you should never feel dumb for asking a question, because question asking is the path to enlightenment. But, you know. So this is a really good system for it. We like it a lot. Generally speaking, if you have a question about, you know, your assignments or the test, or, you know, something to do with, you know, something that you would post like this in a sort of quasi-public forum, by which I mean to say something that isn't too personal, something that would be better handled by email, this is probably going to be the way that you get the fastest turnaround time on any question that you ask. So that's, you know, you can see that in the last semester, our average response time for questions posted was 5 minutes, which is pretty good, and that is primarily attributable to the awesomeness of the TAs from last semester. So that's all good. Yeah, so Piazza, good system, get on it. You have to sign up with a link. They recently moved to a model where, like, unless you give them money, like Wikipedia, then they'll have this sort of, you know, please donate to us at the top of the screen forever, which, you know, is fine. It's better than them locking us out completely, which was, you know, a possibility as well. So I'm not, you know, whether you want to donate donate to the website or not is completely up to you. I don't require it or anything. So yeah, so that is the Piazza forum. Highly, highly recommended. Highly recommended. Your one-stop shop for getting answers to questions. Oh my goodness, that's a lot of everything. My goodness. So, Jupyter Hub. So, we have a server that is interactive assignment completion and submission. Essentially what the thing is it draws up documents that have blocks of code embedded in them in which the code is executable. So an assignment in this class looks like a PDF, kinda, with boxes that you can put your answers in, and you can execute and debug your answers right there in the assignment document. This is called Jupyter, the Jupyter Hub system, and Jupyter Notebooks. It's a little, like, there's a little bit of work to get on, and as I said, we don't have the server quite set up with everybody's login information yet, but once that's done, you get into it by going to this URL, logging in using your Mac ID, and then you'll be able to fetch your assignments from the server, complete them, and then submit them. We're going to have, you know, there will be tutorials on this process coming up. So don't worry too much about it. Sometimes we have a little bit of difficulty with the Jupyter Hub system. In particular, sometimes people have used it for other courses, or, you know, people can't log in for mysterious reasons. There's a quick troubleshooting guide right here on the first page of the syllabus for getting into Jupyter Hub. So once we say that, you know, once we send out the message that the system has been set up correctly, all you have to do is follow this procedure, and everything should be fine. Oh my god, please, I gotta shut that off. Please stop. Can I? Oh my goodness. I'll see if I can shut off those notifications during the first break. Alright, shut up. Shut up! Alright. Actually, that might be a problem. Sorry, just give me some moment. Sorry about this, folks. The TAs are having a somewhat lengthy discussion, and it's popping up as maybe if I sign out, that'll do it. Hopefully that stops it. Nice one, maybe. Alright. There we go. For all I know, they were gonna, like, start posting login information for the servers and stuff like that. Okay, I have some questions. All right, good. We're back. So, one of your colleagues in the chat points out there are a few interesting technical differences between our two simultaneous avenues of submission. So, in general, we have found that for any number of reasons, the Jupyter Hub system can be finicky. Sometimes it's subject to volume problems. Actually, we were, much to our chagrin, we were experiencing some volume problems with Jupyter Hub during the final exam on Wednesday of last week with the other section of 1MD3 that was running, which caused no end of headache. So, the thing about the Jupyter Hub system is that it requires you to log in using a VPN connection. So you have to go to mcmaster.ca/uts/network/VPN and get the McMaster VPN if you want to log into our Jupyter server and complete the assignments that way. That's a must. Now, the problem with the VPN is that in order to maintain a VPN connection, you require a certain bit rate on your internet connection, which can be difficult if you're living on the other side of the damn planet. So we have an alternative means of submitting everything, this is very, very important because this is your ability to work on and submit things like tests and the exam, even if the Jupyter server goes down entirely, or if you can't access it personally, something like that. So, there is a software package called Anaconda, which includes a whole bunch of different pieces of software. It includes the version of Python that will be the Python programming language that we're going to be using in this class, and it also includes it includes Jupyter itself, which it's like you have Jupyter Notebook files that are the assignment files. Those are opened inside of the Jupyter environment. You can do I can open it up actually right now. Let me think. Let me go to Documents, Master Teaching, 1MD3, 1MD3. Go to, I think I've got something kicking out around in winter. Yes. So, this is Linux, by the way, if you've never seen Jupyter Notebook. If you've never seen Linux before, this is like a bash prompt. So, cool. Here we go. So, this is what the home page will look like when you log into the server. This is me running a local instance of it. So, you have these .ipynb files. If you open that up, you will see this is what an assignment looks like, essentially. You will have a question, you'll have a box in which you will program your solution to the problem, and you'll have some test cases to be able to check to see how well your solution works. And, wash, rinse, repeat, that's the entire course, essentially. So I would highly, 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 highly recommend everybody install the Anaconda distribution, learn how to get the assignment files off of Avenue, and open them up in the local Jupyter. Even if you plan on using the server for most of everything, which I think is, in some ways superior, in other ways not superior. It really depends, If you've got a good internet connection, then I think it's fine, but I'd also definitely understand why people would want to be able to do all of that without having to maintain the VPN connection. I would highly, highly recommend installing Anaconda and learning how to use Jupyter within Anaconda so that, if you're trying to complete an assignment on a Saturday evening and the server is giving you guff, you can just say, well, nuts to you, server. I'm going to download that from Avenue and do it that way. And that will just work because you've, learned how that works. So there we go. Good. We also have Microsoft Teams. So Microsoft Teams will be used primarily for office hours. However, if I'm ever having extreme amounts of technical difficulty with this YouTube live stream, I will perform the lecture instead on Teams, but hopefully it won't come to that. Good. Let me see if we have any questions. So this guy, who is called Moonstar, who is an admin here, this is our TA, Mark. Oh yeah, my camera. My goodness. Yeah, it often freezes me on really funny faces. So, let's see here. There we go. Normally it also changes. Yeah, okay, there we go. Yeah, it just happens. I'm not sure why. It's really annoying. Is it possible for me to add a PowerPoint version of the lecture slides on Avenue? No. They don't exist in PowerPoint version. We are not going to have the lectures over Teams. We are going to have the lectures over YouTube. Non-negotiable. So, the lectures will occur Mondays and Tuesdays, as you know. So today and tomorrow, every week for the rest of this, from 9:30 a.m. to 12:20 p.m. They will be live streamed from the instructor's YouTube channel, which you guys are all on. Lectures will be unlisted videos during streaming and made public once complete. Links will be provided in the Avenue announcements feed. Lectures will also be available for viewing after the time of streaming. Class participation will occur using YouTube's built-in chat feature. If technical difficulties occur, a meeting on Microsoft Teams will be our backup lecture location. Lectures occurring on Teams will be recorded and uploaded to the above YouTube channel. That's how things work here. Tutorials. So, the particular mechanisms by which the tutorials will occur have yet to be decided and encoded. Again, everything is kind of a little bit. We're still putting our shoes on with respect to this course, so that information will become available this week. There will be no tutorials the first week of class, which is this class, so don't worry, you're not missing anything yet. This will indicate who your TA is by section, and of course, because this is a summer course, all of the tutorials for every section occur at the same time, from 12:30 to 1:20. Pains will be taken. I think David and Sarthak want to do these tutorials on Teams. I'm not sure if, Mark, if you want to do them on Teams, you're welcome to do that as well. Pains will be taken to make sure that these tutorials also arrive in some sort of medium that allows for asynchronous access. So you'll be able to view the tutorials after they actually occur, which is good. Again, my office hours will be from 10:30 to 11:20 on Microsoft Teams on Thursdays. I think that we will make a new Teams team for this semester, as opposed to everybody who's been sending me requests to join last semester's team. I think perhaps we will do that. So yeah, little bit of boilerplate stuff. So the prerequisites for this course are either Math 1K03, Math 1LS3, Grade 12 Advanced Functions and Introductory Calc, or Grade 12 Calculus and Vectors. So, in general, this course assumes that you have at least Grade 12 Math. So, again, you should be able to deal with algebra and functions and stuff like that. Anti-requisites Engineering 1D04, which is a rough equivalency for this course, which is fine. Our objectives in this course, we want you to have a working basic knowledge of the Python programming language, and by extension, imperative and object-oriented programming languages. We want you to have a knowledge of Python sufficient for scaffolding further exploration of programming as a skill. We want you to learn how to organize, write, document, and test medium-sized programs. We want you to come away with an awareness of the limits of computation. You might have a better idea of why artificial intelligence is not going to completely replace human beings at the end of this course. And we want you to have the ability to bring an informal problem statement into a computational formulation. That is to say, we want you to solve word problems, and we want you to apply algorithmic design techniques for the solving of complex problems. So, you're going to learn how to write algorithms. We're going to learn what algorithms are, and then you're going to learn how to create them. Just a very quick word about that. Most people, it's interesting, the word algorithm has become corrupt, in my estimation, lately. When most people say the word algorithm, what they mean is a recommendation algorithm in YouTube or Facebook or, some kind of large social media website. They talk about the algorithm in capitalized the algorithm. And generally speaking, these are like machine learning algorithms that are semi-autonomous. But the term algorithm itself merely refers to a mathematical procedure. So the process of programming is the process of designing a mathematical procedure for a computer to follow automatically. That is the design of an algorithm, and we're gonna, get into it when we get into the course. But this is what we're talking about. So, the topics we're going to cover during this course: Introduction to Fundamental Programming Concepts, Values and Types, Expressions and Evaluation, Control Flow, Constructs and Exceptions, Recursion, Input and Output, and File Processing. We're going to cover more topics than just that, but those are the basic ones. So now we'll get to the part which everybody is waiting for. How so you're going to be evaluated. So, in this particular summer instance of this course, we will have 40% of your final grade attributable to assignments, 20% attributable to the midterm test, and 40% attributable to your final examination. All evaluations in this course are individual in nature. No group work will be assigned. Treating individual work as if it's group work is academic dishonesty, just so you know. All assessments in this course will use Jupyter notebooks. There are 2 ways to get and complete the assignments, which I already talked about, but it's use Jupyter Hub, our Jupyter Hub server, and the VPN, or download Jupyter through Anaconda and get the assignment files through Avenue and complete them offline and then submit them through Avenue. Again, we're gonna talk about this in some detail later on. So, with respect to your assignments will be written using the online learning platform Jupyter Hub. The assignments are designed to reinforce the material presented in the lecture, as well as tutorials. Completion of the assignments on an individual basis is essential to your success in this course. There will be 10 assignments. They will be we'll be having 2 assignments per week for the middle 5 weeks of this course, right? So this is a 7-week course. No assignments this week. The next 5 weeks we'll have 2 assignments per week, and then the final week will be, just for studying for the test, or studying for the exam. Cool. Late submissions will not be accepted. Assignments will be due Mondays at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is right before class starts. So, again, we have 7 weeks of class. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In week 2, assignments 1 and 2 will be assigned, and the due dates for those are also indicated in this table in section 4. So assignments 1 or 2 and 2 are due the 17th at 9:30 a.m. Assignments 3 and 4 are due the 24th at 9:30 a.m., etc., etc., etc. Cool. So, assignments will often contain bonus questions, which are more difficult in nature. Actually, sometimes they're not more difficult in nature, they're just sort of bonus questions. The amount, it doesn't matter if you get an average that's over 100%, we cap it at 100%. So the total amount of your grade that the assignments can contribute is capped at 40%. So if you get 110% average on your assignments, that sort of will get knocked down to 100%. Another way of thinking about this is that bonus marks on assignments contribute only to marks lost on assignments. Same thing with the test and same thing with the exam. So yeah, good. With respect to tests, there will be 1 midterm test. The test will be in take-home format and distributed through Jupyter Hub. The test is open book, but collaboration between students on test questions will not be tolerated. You will have 24 hours to complete the test. The test will be cumulative. The test will also feature bonus questions, but the total amount of your test grade can contribute to your final grade is capped at 20%. So I'll just go over the way in which the tests are occurring, because the test and the exam are both occurring in the same manner. Usually people are reasonably confused by this or require some clarification. The test is in take-home format. The test questions themselves become available at 9 o'clock, May 30th, or in the case of the midterm test, and 9 o'clock a.m., June 20th, in the case of the final exam. You then have 24 hours in which to write the test or exam. A full 24 hours. It's not time limited after you've downloaded it or something. It's not like you download it and then you have 3 hours, something like that. You have as much time as you want within the 24-hour period to fill out, to perform the test or the exam. That being said, I'm sorry, I got that wrong. Sorry, the start time is May 29th and June 19th, not May 30th and June 20th. Those are the end times, because apparently I can't read. So when the tests are due, that is a hard due date, right? You must have your test submitted by the specified end time, or else it will not be graded. The only exception to this is if you're a person who has a SAS accommodation. If you have one, you'll know who you are. If you wouldn't mind getting those accommodation letters in ASAP so that we can get everything organized, that would be absolutely fabulous. The way that we handle SAS accommodations with respect to tests and the exam is whatever percentage overage you get per hour for a test writing regularly, we apply that to a 24-hour writing period. So if you get, plus 25%, that's an additional 6 hours on a 24-hour writing period. So that's how that works. Good. Final examination. The final examination will occur at the end of the semester. The exam will also be in take-home format and distributed through Jupyter Hub and Avenue. The exam is open book, but collaboration between students on test questions is strictly forbidden. Strictly forbidden. You have 24 hours to complete the exam. The exam will be cumulative, obviously. The exam will have bonus questions, and the amount your final exam may contribute to your final grade is capped at 40%. Of course, you may expect the exam to focus somewhat more on the stuff that hasn't been tested, which is stuff after the midterm. That's sort of typical for exams, but you can also expect stuff from before the midterm to also show up. It's the whole class that you're being tested on during the exam. Let me see if we have any questions. Yep. Thank you very much, Mark, for answering all these questions. So, extension and late submission policy. So, i.e., what does MSAF mean in this class? Because MSAFs are kind of subject to a certain amount of interpretation depending on what class you're taking. So, in this case, invoking an MSAF on an assignment results in an exemption for that assignment. So that means that assignment sort of dissolves, and the portion of your grade that was contributed by that assignment gets reallocated to the other assignments. We also have a policy of dropping the lowest assignment grade in addition to that. So, if you MSAF an assignment and you take that, and that lowest grade is dropped, then, that's reasonably generous, I think. If you invoke the MSAF for the test, in an ordinary semester, what I would do is I would distribute those marks among the other tests. But because this is a short semester, and we're only having the one test, I have no choice but to have the test percentage placed upon the final exam. So if you MSAF the test, the exam will be a 60% exam. So there you go. For the final, standard university policy will be applied, i.e. the policy on deferred examinations. So, you'd have to go through the usual channels and write the deferred exam in October or whenever it will be. MSAFs must be submitted online through the MSAF portal. If you require an accommodation beyond the scope of the MSAF-related policy, please email the instructor. Be advised that if you want if you want things sort of extending or in addition to the MSAF policy, I reserve the right to ask questions about the particular, the thing that you want and the reason you want it and that sort of thing in order to adjudicate whether or not I'm actually going to give it to you. And I also reserve the right to give it to you or not give it to you. But generally speaking, I'm a human being. You're a human being. I understand that, if at the beginning of the semester you fall down a slight flight of stairs and break one of your legs, and you need to use an MSAF, and then at the end of the semester you fall down the same set of stairs and break your other leg, and you need a second accommodation of that nature, I'm not an ogre. I do have a heart within the, calcified remains of what formerly was the heart of a previously spry and ambitious undergraduate. The gradual calcification process that occurs during grad school has not completely closed off all human feeling from this poor, poor wretch. So, if you need something, ask for it. Ask and ye shall receive. Okay? The point is not to, hammer you over the head until you stop complaining about it, Anyway. So, let me see if we have any comments. Yeah. So let's go over our timeline. This is a summer course. So if you've never done a summer course before, it's pretty intense. I'm gonna level with you right now. This is an intensive course of study. Over the next 7 weeks, we are going to be moving at double the pace usual to the regular semester version of this course. That means that, as bad as it is to fall behind on things during the regular semester, it is the square of that. However bad that is, it's that badness squared to fall behind in this summer version of the course. This course moves fast, and if you don't keep up, you'll be lost. I'm just going to put it out there right now. We are expecting twice the amount of work that we would expect during the regular semester. We will, the lectures themselves will be moving at double the pace. Each day that we have lectures, the intention is to cover 1 week of lectures during the regular semester. So it is important that you watch the lectures, despite the fact that they're 3 hours long. So, yeah. Our topics, in order of their coverage, will be introduction, which is, we have slides in addition to the syllabus that I'm currently going through. Programming and expressions, statements and control flow, structured data types, functions and recursion, numerical computation. We won't have any class on Victoria Day, because it's a holiday. Testing and exceptions, file input and output, classes and objects. That I should be removed there. Visualization and time, databases, machine learning, and exam review / makeup time. Unfortunately, the unfortunate thing is that I often get behind with the lecture material by a certain amount, so I'll try to keep things to this schedule, but, it's kind of So here's a question for you guys. How many of you guys are, where do you guys come from? What faculty are you guys in? So, because, you know, the timing of the topics to some degree is laid out for the benefit of people who are in the computer science faculty. I find when I teach this course to an audience that is primarily not from a computer science background, you have to spend more time on the basics to get the basics hammered in because, with respect to the importance of topics in this course to your ability to program, it's actually kind of an exponential decay, starting with programming and expressions. So if you don't learn, if you don't hammer home the concepts in, the first 3 lectures, really, really well, you have absolutely no hope of understanding anything past that point. So, you have to understand if statements. You have to understand loops. You have to get these concepts down in order to be able to move on with the course. So often I spend a little bit more time on these opening lectures to sort of hammer that stuff home when you guys have never heard of if statements before, which is, there are going to be people in this class who have never heard of an if statement before, which is fine. This is intro programming, but that means we have to spend a little bit more time on the introductory stuff, which means I have to move a bit more quickly through some of the sort of the terminal topics that aren't as directly applicable to basic ability to program, shall we say. Often machine learning is that's the one that always suffers, just because it's, it's kind of optional. So that's our optional extended topic for this course. If we have time for it, we'll cover it. To me, it's more important that you guys understand what an if statement is. I've already talked about what the test and exam schedule is, so you don't have to wonder when your tests are. Please, whatever your calendar is that you have, enter these dates into your calendar right now so that you don't forget, because believe it or not, we have actually had people forget that there's a test, and they come to me later and say, I forgot there's a test, is there anything I can do? And I'm like, no, unfortunately, it's a test. That's just how it works. It's like not showing up to the testing room the day there's a test. What can I do? Nothing. For individuals with testing accommodations, extra time will be allotted in accordance with your accommodation plan. Students requiring accommodation must be registered with the Office of the Student Accountability Services. Accommodation testing will be performed in accordance with the relevant McMaster policy documents. In general, we find that the take-home nature of the test is in accordance with any accommodations that you may have on your policy, and we can extend the time. So there you go. Resources, textbook. So there is a textbook. It's highly optional. It's kind of like if you're the type of person who enjoys extended readings, this is where you would get those extended readings. In the Avenue, under each topic on the Avenue page, we've got readings. We've got readings for that week or that topic from the Guttag book, John V. Guttag's Introduction to Computation and Programming Using Python with Applications to Understanding Data, 2nd edition. So if you want to get it, go right ahead. There are many, many other resources as well that we're going to go through. A lot of people have been asking in the chat whether or not there are other extended online resources, and yes, we'll get into that too. So let's see where everybody's from. Commerce, Soxi, Science, Eng. Ooh, Eng. Interesting. You should be taking 1DO4, shouldn't you? I don't know. Commerce, Science. Yep. Science. Commerce. Lots of commerce students. Lots of science students. Cool. Biochem. Cool. So primarily business people and science people this semester. That's cool. Very cool. Yeah, so... Yeah, you guys might... yeah, being primarily from a non-computer science background, you'll probably want me to spend more time on, you know, the elementary elements, so to speak. Good. So, quick note, if you're using the Anaconda distribution, then you get this automatically, but whatever you're using, make sure you're using Python 3, not Python 2. Getting assistance. Because of the sheer I know, I'll finish the syllabus, then we'll take a quick break for 10 minutes, okay? Getting assistance. So we have a system in place for, you know, first point of contact, second point of contact, third and fourth point of contact, if you have an issue, a question about an assignment, or something like that. So, if you have a question about the interpretation of a question, or anything related to assignments as you're writing them, or tests as you're writing them, I recommend going to Piazza and opening up a question, and we will answer those questions. If you have a question about your assessment after it has been returned to you graded, the recommended course of action is to email a TA, email your TA from your tutorial section, and request that your assignment be looked at, and the TA will look at your assignment. If you feel through that process that you have not acquired a sufficient degree of justice, if you feel that you still have a problem with the manner in which your assignment has been marked, then the next step, you then elevate that from the TA level to me. I will take a look at it and, you know, process whatever needs to be processed, or explain whatever needs to be explained, and yeah, so that's your chain of command in general. You can also ask your TAs questions during tutorials. That may be of use if you, you know, if you want to talk to someone, you know. Also, office hours. So, the idea with this course is that you have as many avenues as possible to get questions answered or get in communication with the relevant parties. It's difficult because this is online school yet again. I can understand why the enrollment numbers for online school this summer were down so much, because I imagine everybody's getting like absolutely completely fed up with this at this point. I know I'm getting that pretty close to that myself. It's really hard because there's not that personal level of interaction, you know? It's like I'm talking to you, the students, and you, Mark, hello. But, you know, as far as my real brain is concerned, I'm right now talking to a corner of my room, right? Which, you know, talking to walls is, generally speaking, what insane people do, or one of the things that insane people do is talk to people who aren't there. So my brain is, to some degree, giving me subtle signals for, you know, like better than a year now that I'm crazy, and you know, you have to try to mitigate that with additional contact with people, but that's impossible because we're all in lockdown, and it's like, if you're living in a region that's not in lockdown, thank your lucky stars. But in Ontario, things are still pretty locked down at the moment. So, you know, the point I'm trying to make is free and open communication has never been more important, not only for your success in the course, but your general maintenance of sanity. So, so please, don't be afraid to talk to people. Talk to your classmates, talk to us, you know. even conversationally, uh, you know, although if there's too much about that, yeah, yeah, um, yeah, good, good, good. Mark just reinforcing what I'm saying. But yeah. So anyway, so let's talk about cheating and dirty, dirty cheaters. So, academic integrity. You are expected to exhibit honesty and use ethical behavior in all aspects of the learning process. The academic credentials you earn are rooted in principles of honesty and academic integrity. Academic dishonesty is to knowingly act or fail to act in a way that results or could result in unearned academic credit or advantage. This behavior can result in serious consequences, as grade of 0 on the assignment, loss of credit with a notation on transcript, and or suspension or expulsion from the university in its entirety. It is your responsibility to understand what constitutes academic dishonesty. For information on the various types, refer to the policy document indicated. The following illustrate only 5 forms of academic dishonesty: plagiarism, improper collaboration on group work, copying or using unauthorized aids in tests and examinations, allowing your work to be copied by another student, or submitting for academic credit work that has already been submitted for academic credit, i.e. in a previous offering of 1MD3. This is an interesting one because most people don't actually realize that is... It's not only technically, but it's also, like, ethically, also academic dishonesty. If you have taken 1MD3 before, you have to redo all of your assignments. You can't just resubmit your old assignments, and, presumably the only reason that you would retake 1MD3 is because you either failed it the first time or didn't get a grade that you wanted the first time. So why you would resubmit your old assignments that caused a grade that you didn't like, again, is beyond me. Just doesn't seem wise, but a lot of people don't realize that's actually in the policy, so I like to point it out. So people are generally at this point like, okay, so how do I not get caught cheating then? Because it isn't. How do I not get caught cheating when I didn't cheat? How do I avoid a false positive on the academic integrity test? So, in general, there are a couple of things that if you just follow these rules, you'll be fine. All right? Do not ever, 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 ever share your code. Right? Please feel free to discuss the problems with... feel free to discuss the assignment problems with your colleagues. But if you're giving them code you have written to look at, that, in and of itself, is a problem. Because you don't know if, you don't know, no matter how well you know the other person, you don't know if they're going to use your code, you don't know if they're going to repost your code other places. Eventually, that code might become, part of some grand, grand organism of cheating that spreads its tendrils through the internet like a gross amoeba or something. Another thing that constitutes, and this should be obvious, but using third-party tutor sites to, essentially, they frame it as being like paid tutoring, but what it often constitutes is you pay someone else to do your assignments for you. That's also cheating, especially if it's on a test. So don't use that. Don't use that website that they use for that, which I forget the name of. It's not Chungus, but it might be. I don't think it's Chungus. That's a meme. Anyway, Mark knows. He'll probably put the name of it in the chat. Don't use it, because it's cheating. There is a fine line between paying someone to tutor you in the subject and paying someone to do your assignments. Actually, there's not that fine a line between them. Those are very different things. And any tutor who's worth their salt knows the difference. So the mechanism that we use to detect plagiarism in this class is a web-based service called Measure of Software Similarity, or MOS. We use it to interrogate the authenticity and ownership of student-submitted work. MOS is a system developed specifically for detecting plagiarism in programming code and is tuned to the specific ways in which code is plagiarized. Things like variable renaming. People think they're clever because they rename the variables on someone else's assignment and think that constitutes, not cheating, but it is cheating, and MOS picks it up. MOS generates a plagiarism report in which pairs of submissions are given a similarity score, the highest of which are tabulated into a report document that we get. Submissions which have a high degree of similarity are then examined manually for plagiarism and dealt with accordingly. Do not be fooled. Contrary to public opinion, a person's code is as unique to them as an essay would be. The argument, well, there's only one way to solve the problem anyways, will be dealt with by the swift wings and iron zero-giving fist of electronic justice. Yes, it's true. The manner in which you compose an algorithm it's actually a reasonably similar process to composing a sentence. There are 1,000 little tags that identify your work uniquely among everybody else's when it comes to writing a program. So, yeah, this is 100% applicable. Students who do not wish to submit their work through the plagiarism detection software must inform the instructor before the assignment is due. No penalty will be assigned to a student who does not submit work to the plagiarism detection software. All submitted work is subject to normal verification that standards of academic integrity have been upheld, i.e., online search, other software, etc. For more information about it, McMaster's use of Turnitin.com, please go to mcmaster.ca/academic integrity. There we go. The rest of this is basically boilerplate stuff. Expectations of conduct. You are expected to conduct yourself according to the Code of Conduct. We are not going to be using online proctoring in this course, so that's fine. We will use several online elements, so just keep in mind that any of the things that I ask you to sign up for, these are, if they're a third party, then they are a third party, which means that there are implications of using third-party software with that. Academic accommodations for religious, indigenous, or spiritual observances. One of the things that often happens in my class is I tend to book my tests and exams on Saturdays, which means I'm interfering with the Sabbath according to Judaism. So if you are a person who observes the Sabbath in that manner and you'd like a religious accommodation for that, please just email me and we'll sort it out. Etc., etc. If you have any of those sorts of, if I have booked something over a holiday, let me know and we'll sort something out. I probably won't move it for the whole class, but you'll get like a allowance or something. Copyright is a thing, even though it shouldn't be. The university reserves the right to change dates and deadlines, etc., etc., in case there's another, even worse pandemic that locks us in our houses even harder. One can't imagine how much worse it could possibly get than the current circumstance with respect to it, but, knock on wood, one shouldn't invite trouble by saying such things. But yeah, in general, that's the syllabus. Let's see, yes, yes. Chegg. I was close. Chungus was a close guess. Yes. Yeah, that's the other thing, is because this is a university system for plagiarism, we do not make accusations of plagiarism lightly. We require strong evidence of plagiarism in order to, you know, accuse people of it. So, you know, we don't... This isn't the sort of class where we just throw plagiarism accusations at the wall and see how many of them stick. That just seems cruel and unusual. But yeah, okay. So we'll take a 10-minute break here. And when we resume, we will get into some actual lecture material. So, awesome. Thank you very much. I'll see you guys in a few minutes. Take her easy in the meantime. Hello! Welcome back. Welcome back, everyone. Cool. Good. Sounds working. Fantastic. So, So let's get right into our, let's get into it. No. Come on. All right. Fine. We'll do it your way, computer. Right. So, programming. Let's talk programming. Oh, there's the other TA. We have... Okay, so this is cool. Now, if you see someone speaking with a blue tag, that is a TA. So, you can easily and quickly visually distinguish the people who are TAs in the chat from the people who are not TAs. There you go. So, so let's talk programming. Again, pardon me. So, if I may introduce the topic slightly, right here, right now. In order to understand what a program is and how to create one, you have to understand, at least in general terms, what a computer is. You don't have to understand how to put one together. You don't have to understand what the components they're made of, but you need to understand what a computer does. Computers do this. They take inputs, they process commands, and they generate outputs as the results of those commands. That is everything that a computer does. It loads memory into the CPU. It performs calculations on the data in that memory, and then it puts whatever the results of its calculations are back wherever it found it. Or somewhere else entirely. But the concepts, the absolutely crucial grade school level concepts to understand how computers work are input and output. Input, output. Garbage in, garbage out. So let's think about how we formulate problems. What is the square root of 25? It's 5. What is the square root of some number y? The square root of y is some number x such that x times x equals y. Right? So let's talk about... So these are sort of classical formulations of problems. This is not algorithm, right? This is not an algorithmic description. So let's talk about a problem that does have an algorithmic description. What is the x-intercept of a function f? So the x-intercept of a function f is x such that f at x is equal to 0, right? So how do we find it? Let's establish some base conditions first. First, let's suppose that whatever f is, our function f, it's a monotonically increasing function on some interval a to b, right? So what that means is that it doesn't inflect and then go down. It's each point from a to b, no matter where you measure it, is slightly higher than the point before it and slightly lower than the point after it, monotonically increasing. If you pick any 2 points on this function within the interval if the x coordinate is less, if x1 is less than x2, then y1 is less than y2, essentially. So here's an algorithm for determining the x-intercept with some precision epsilon. So long as b minus a is greater than epsilon, do steps 2 to 4. So b is the upper bound, a is the lower bound, right? Calculate the midpoint, which is a plus b divided by 2. If the value of the function at the midpoint is greater than or equal to 0, set a to m. Or, sorry, less than or equal to 0. Set a to m, or if if the value of the function at the midpoint is greater than 0, we set b to m. So the idea is, in this case, we're hitting this condition number 4, right? Because the value of the function at the midpoint is greater than 0. So you can see if you move the bound b into where m is, we maintain the property that there is an x-intersection between a and b, right? Whereas if we performed the opposite, if we moved the a bound up to the middle, we lose that property of there being an intersection with the x-axis somewhere on the interval AB. The essential, the way that this algorithm works is it finds an approximation of the x-intercept by taking this interval and dividing it by 2 at each iteration in such a manner that whenever we take a section of the function, the intersection is still inside of our interval. If we do that, and we continue to narrow down the interval successively, that interval eventually becomes so small that it's within some predetermined error, which we define ahead of time as epsilon. So, in that manner, we can come up with an approximation of the x-intercept via this algorithmic process. Let's see. So that's how you do that. So just for the sake of having fun, I guess, I'll show you guys how this method would be programmed. Let me just 1MD3. Let me just open up Spring code. All right. So in Python, you have to define a couple of things. Let's first define a function. So define f takes argument x, return x squared, squared, that'll be fine. Define x intersect takes a function f and it takes an interval a, b, it takes an epsilon, and just for fun, let's give it the function itself as well. This is, you don't have to understand all of this. By the end of this course, you'll understand all of this. This is just to give you, the idea is to just give you a flavor for how programming works. So, so our procedure then, if we remember our slides, as long as b minus a is greater than epsilon, do stuff. That's a loop. So while b minus a is greater than epsilon, do stuff. Calculate m is equal to a plus b, divide by 2. Make sure you put the brackets in for bedmass purposes. If f at m is less than or equal to 0, set a equal to m. A is equal to m. Else if, or in Python it's actually elif, f at m is greater than or equal to 0. Set b equal to m. And then return the interval a b. So print just displays stuff to the screen. You'll see how this works. The x-intersect of, let's say, well, actually, let's make this so that it actually will work, eh? There we go. Because x squared, it'll just touch 0, right? So if we move it down by 4, then the x-intersect, I believe, will become 2. But we'll see. So let's say on the interval from 0 to 10, with an epsilon of 0.0001 and the function f, let's see if that works. Let's see what we get as a result. Python 3, topic1.py, bing, bang, boom. So, yes, it works. So what we get as a result are the new values of a and b, 1.99999 and 2.00000. So because this is an approximation algorithm, it's actually incapable of finding the precise and exact x-intercept. But it can find, really, really, really close bounds around it, right? So, a human being would look at that and say, well, obviously it's 2. But a computer, there is nothing obvious to a computer. We can make this more and less precise by adjusting the epsilon, incidentally. So there you go. And that's what an algorithm looks like. Let's see, have I completely confused people yet? Nope. Okay, good. Everybody's busily writing stuff down, I guess. So, this is good. So let's talk about the different types of programming languages and the different ways of formulating problems. Remember, on this slide, we're talking about problems in terms of what the solution is, and in this one, we're talking about a problem in terms of the steps to take to solve it. Right? This is the general difference between declarative descriptions and imperative descriptions. It turns out that in programming, there are declarative and imperative programming languages. If any of you go on to take more computer science courses and you take 1JC3, you will cover the programming language Haskell, which is a declarative rather than an imperative language. In Haskell, you write the characteristics of the answer, and the programming language figures out how to calculate it. But when we're programming in Python, we are working in the imperative paradigm. So imperative descriptions tell us how the result is obtained given a sequence of instructions. Each step is simple enough that it can be followed. So you see in this, like when I wrote this program, each one of these steps individually, it says something very specific and rigid, and like the path through the algorithm that the computer has to take is very obvious to the computer. Although it's not so obvious to human beings, but we're not as good at following instructions. So, in the case of the x-intersect, restrictions on the input are imposed. So f is declared to be monotonic, and additional input is needed, and the result is only approximate. There is repetition and selection. So one of the things that's very, very important for your conception of how an algorithm works is to have an idea that inputs have constraints placed on them, right? So if you have your x-intersect algorithm, this algorithm requires f to be monotonically increasing on the given interval. Otherwise, the assumptions made during the formulation of this algorithm do not apply to the situation you're trying to apply them to, right? So, in general, you can consider the inputs of pretty much any function that you write in a programming language to have these kinds of implicit or explicit conditions on them. Another way of saying this is when we decide on having an input to a function, there is information attached to that input that might be just in our brains, or it might be separately encoded inside of the programming language itself. Generally speaking, whenever we have information that is just in our brains, we try to put it into the program, at least in the form of a comment, which is a documentation of the thing that you're doing. So, let's see. Yes. Yeah, that's a good... Epsilon is the precision, yes. That's a good conception. The algorithm is the process by which the input is transformed into the output. Yes. Absolutely. Yes. So, an algorithm specifies a sequence of instructions to be executed by a machine that, when provided with an input, will eventually stop and produce some output. It is the means of acquiring the output by means of the input. Yes. It's like Super Mario 64. You have a controller. You press buttons on the controller, you press the A button on your controller, and Mario jumps in the game and interacts with the physics of the objects in the game. The manner in which his position changes when you press the A button is left... That is the algorithm for Mario jumping. Algorithms, you've actually used algorithms in your daily life all the time. You just don't know it. Classical example is recipes. So if you follow a recipe in a cookbook, you start with inputs, which are your ingredients. You have a set of instructions, which is the recipe itself, and then you have an output, which is hopefully edible food. The implicit assumption with respect to a recipe is that if the instructions are followed correctly, the food that results will be edible and perhaps even pleasurable to consume. And if your food is inedible after having followed the recipe, one of two things has happened. Either you failed to follow the recipe properly, or the recipe itself was bad, right? In the case of computers are perfect at executing the recipe, but the recipe is sufficiently complicated that it can often have problems with it that cause the food to be terrible. Generally speaking, in the context of computing, we call these bugs. If you write a buggy program, what that actually means is that the output that you got is different from the output you expected. So, if you are playing Mario, and you press the A button to jump, and instead of jumping, he falls off a cliff, just kind of clips right through the floor and falls and dies, that is a bug. Because when you press the A button, you expect Mario to jump. But when you press the A button, you get something different from what you expected. That's a bug. Another classical example is a traffic light. So the inputs to a traffic light are time and car presence sensors. The instructions are the conditions on which the lights should be lit, and the outputs are the electrical signals to the light bulbs that constitute the traffic light itself. And hopefully people then follow driving algorithms with respect to, from the perspective of the driver, the state of the traffic around them and the state of the traffic signals constitutes the inputs, and the motion of the vehicle constitutes the output. Everything is input and output, at least to a programmer. So, algorithms. The computations prescribed by an algorithm go through a sequence of states, starting from an initial state, which is synonymous with the input, and each instruction leading to a new state. A trace is the result of moving through. So, if you want to see what the internal states of an algorithm are, you trace it. So, we can do that on this algorithm that we've written just to make things interesting. So, when we talk about state, we are also talking about memory. So memory is an extremely key concept when it comes to programming. Memory, so within the context of your computer, memory is stuff like your RAM card, like your RAM chips, right? Random access memory. Stick it in. That's the memory that your computer has to work with, roughly speaking. So the way that memory works, or an analogy for how memory works, is you can think of memory as a series of cardboard boxes, right? Those boxes can be filled with numbers, right? The numbers are expressed in binary number, like they're binary, right? They're sequences of ones and zeros that are interpreted as, integers or whatever, strings, floats, whatever. But the memory cells are boxes that hold numbers, right? When you put a number into a box, that is assignment, right? When you're talking about the state of a program during execution, what you're talking about is what is in the boxes that the program is using right now, right? And we can see this. The easiest way to take a look at your state is to print it using print statements. But there are other ways of doing it as well. Copy and paste is the programmer's best friend. So you can see through the intermediate states that are now visible to us, A and B start off as 0 and 10, then B is reduced to 5, 2.5, A is then brought up to 1.25, and you can see that as time goes on, these guys eventually converge on the value of 2 without ever actually having reached it. So that's what is meant by tracing. When you trace a program, you are asking the computer to show you the intermediate states. Another way of doing this, and this is super, super useful, so I hope everybody's paying attention right now, but there's a website called Python Tutor. And Python Tutor is extremely helpful because if you put your program into it, maybe the entire program would be good, and you hit Visualize Execution, you can actually pull your way through the execution of your program, and it will tell you, in terms of a timeline, what your intermediate states are. There we go. You can see what your intermediate states are in this in the execution of this function by using Python Tutor. I highly, 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 highly recommend using Python Tutor to complete assignments. Like, I would, if I were you, and I were just learning programming, I would do up my assignment problem inside of Python Tutor, check its execution, and then copy it into my assignment. It's extremely useful to be able to see what's going on with the variables as the program executes. 100%. Cool. So, this is good. This is good. Where is it? Here it is. Cool. So yeah, and the other thing is the term algorithm derives from the name of a 9th century Persian mathematician who wrote a treatise on it, which was then, of course, bastardized by and Romanized by the West, and eventually found its way into the English language. So, algorithms have some properties. Number one, well, if they're good algorithms, they have these properties. Number one, they need to be precise. Each instruction and the next possible instruction needs to be unambiguous. This is not, there is no art to it, if I guess you could say. Like, the whole point of you being the programmer is to remove any necessity for judgment from the execution of an algorithm. In fact, if there is still the possibility for ambiguous interpretation, you can't even write a program about it. The process of encoding something in a programming language removes the ambiguity, whether you realize it or not, so that, the program can be executed by a computer in a mechanical fashion. So algorithms need to be precise, and they also need to be effective. It's not useful to ask a computer to do something that it can't do. It's kind of like they have those old jokes, or like that joke where it's like invent kneecaps for bees ... profit, right? Like, that algorithm is neither precise because it doesn't tell you how specifically, like, the ... misses how precisely to make a profit from having invented bees' kneecaps, right? There's nothing connecting the input to the output there, and it's not effective because, basically for the same reason, you can't execute nothing, right? If it's not specified precisely, then it's by default not effective, right? It's like, whereas with a person you can say something like, write a novel, sell it to a publisher, and that's a valid sequence, right? The specific actions involved in writing a novel are so, ambiguous that they can only really be executed by a human. Anyway, so I find these slides that kind of ask people to respond to questions don't work very well on the online format, but so I'll just go through this. This is a particular case. So what happens if f at m is equal to 0 after instruction 2? So the question is, what happens if what happens with this algorithm if the x-intersect is actually hit? Right? And we can actually test this because we have a version of this algorithm. But we have to kind of gerrymander it a little bit. If we set the interval from 0 to 4, that should hit 0 dead on. Yeah. So this is what it does. 2 is the x-intersect. And you can see that 2 never changes throughout all of this. But the other side is continuously homing in on 2. So this is a good demonstration of why we know that the x-intersect is somewhere in the interval, but not in the exact middle of it, right? Because it could actually, it could be either bound A or B. But, you know, these questions are asking things like, is this algorithm ambiguous? And it's like, it is, but it isn't. It is in the sense that both case 3 and 4 include the case where f at m is equal to 0, right? We've got less than or equals here, greater than or equals there. Which one of those do you choose? When you encode it as a program, one of those goes first. And whichever one of those goes first, you know, that that's the one that, you know, the equals 0 case will match that one, and then, you know, perform that operation as opposed to the other one. Notice the very key use of the word otherwise here. If that otherwise wasn't there, then what you would have is just a regular if statement instead of an else if statement, in which case you would just get 2, 2, right? Because it would write both of these, right? Both A and B would be set to the midpoint because f at m is equal to 0 in both cases. So yeah. Doop. So, question. Is the output of this algorithm always unique? Kind of a trick question. If it is unambiguous, which it is once it's been encoded in a programming language, for the same inputs, it will return the same outputs. But so, you know, it's not unique in the sense that you'll get a different result every time you run it. But it is not unique in the sense, like, if you account for the event of, you know, the inputs being the same. You could also very easily imagine a case where, you know, you have one function that has an x-intersect of 3, and then you have like 10 other functions that all have an x-intersect of 3. You know, the output is not unique among all of those different functions, right? So the output is not unique. However, the output should also always be the same if you're giving it the same inputs. That's a very, 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 very highly important property of algorithms, is that you get the same output if you put the same input in. If that's not the case, nothing works. So, cool. So, we've talked about algorithms a bit. Let's talk about how we distinguish algorithms. How do we distinguish algorithms from each other? How do we compare them? How do we evaluate the effectiveness of an algorithm? Normally, we evaluate the effectiveness of an algorithm among a couple of different dimensions. Number one, and this is the most important one, is the algorithm correct? In general, the only thing that we're testing you guys for is correctness with respect to your algorithms that you write for this class. We are not testing you for efficient algorithms. We are testing you for correct algorithms. And that is entirely wrapped up in, if we give you a specific input, do we get the output that we expected? In fact, the way that the assignments are even graded, we use an auto-grading system which automatically gives inputs into your functions that you write for a assignment or a test or whatever, and compares the result that your algorithm gives to the correct result, which is normally derived from our sort of master version of the solution to the problem. If your algorithm produces the expected output, then it is correct. If your algorithm did not produce the expected output, then it is not correct. That is the definition of correctness with respect to computer algorithms. Now, there are a couple of caveats to that. right? You do need some level of efficiency. If the computer, if running the algorithm would take longer than the universe is old, but would eventually come up with the correct solution, that's still not a good algorithm, right? And you may think I'm exaggerating when I say things like, it would take longer than the universe is old, but that's actually the type of problem that you run into in computation. If you take all of the possible tweets that exist in terms of permutations of the number of characters that compose a tweet, if you wanted to check each possible tweet for some thing, I don't know, some arrangement of characters or whatever, you would have to run your computer for, a million times the age of the universe so far, or something like that. The numbers explode ridiculously quickly. And the reason for that is every individual bit in the input doubles the number of possible inputs. So if you have, an integer that is 8 bits long, you have 64 possible inputs. If you add one more bit to that, you have 128, then 256, then 512, 1024, etc., etc., etc. It blows up exponentially, which means that by the time you get to, things of even modest size, you're talking about the number of possible the number of possible tweets is if every atom in the universe contained within itself another universe, and every atom in that universe, in those universes, also contained universes, and every atom inside of those universes had a tweet written on them, you still wouldn't have all of the possible tweets that exist. So these are the types of problems that computer scientists have to deal with. That's known as the state explosion problem. And, in one sense it sounds bad, but it's also the thing that makes encryption work. So, encryption is difficult to break because of the number of possible passwords, right? Because the number of possible passwords is exceptionally large, it's difficult to guess them. And that's what makes passwords work. So, question. Can we compute the exact x-intercept by taking epsilon equal to 0? No. Because this algorithm, it cannot compute, basically to some degree, there's no such thing as precision when it comes to these types of numbers. Although it seems to work in this case, but if we modify it by a very slight amount, then what you essentially end up with is the value will oscillate between two values, and you'll never actually find an exact solution to the problem. So this isn't really super important right now. We'll get into it a lot more when we talk about floating point representations, which is topic 6? Topic 6 will return to this. So, but the answer is, if A and B are rational, then the x-intersect is irrational, then it will never be reached. So there you go. And whether a number is rational or irrational depends on its base system. There are numbers that are rational in decimal that are irrational in binary, and vice versa. So let's talk about flowcharts. One sort of common way that algorithms are introduced to people is in the form of a flowchart. Flowcharts are a good analogy for programs, because you sort of, in the same way that you trace your finger through paths of a flowchart, That is essentially what a computer does with a computer algorithm. Computers always have a single, they are always at a single point inside of an algorithm and moving through the algorithm according to its structure. At least at this level. Once you start getting into, networking and multiple computers and multiple cores in computers and, distributed computing and all kinds of third and fourth year topics, we start breaking down these types of distinctions. But for this course, at the level we're at right now, and certainly within the context of introductory Python programming, it is correct to think of a CPU as having, it's like it has an arrow that pointing to one instruction in the algorithm. That's the one it's on. It does that one, then it moves to the next, which I believe is the same way that things are visualized inside a Python tutor. Yeah, that's how things are being visualized inside of Python tutor. With arrows, this is the one I'm on, this is the one that's next. Right? That's what the computer does. It moves through the algorithm sequentially and systematically. Boop. So, within flowcharts, we've got a few different constructions to talk about. If you see a rectangle, that's an instruction, statement, command, or action. Within the sort of analogies, it's things like turn on the green light, continue straight ahead, or subtract v from u. Within the context of an actual program, it's statements like a is equal to m, or assign m to a, or assign m to b. These are statements. This is also a statement. It's instructing the computer to do a specific thing. You also have conditions, Boolean expressions or tests. Things like drum is full, water boils, u is not equal to v. Within the context of our program here, if f at m is equal to 0, then I'll just put the else back in there for now. So if this condition is true, we do that. If this condition is true, we do that. And if neither condition is true, we do nothing. So Boolean conditions, very, very, very important. So flowcharts are composed. I don't know. You guys probably already know this, but in order to move through different elements in a flowchart, you connect them with arrows. You can connect multiple things with arrows. If you have something like S and then T, you have S then T. That's like, in terms of programming, that's like print this, print that, do this. It's just do this, do this, do this. Often, in a flowchart, multiple commands will be composed into one box. You don't have to worry too awful much about producing flowcharts. In this class, we're going to focus primarily on programming. But this is still a very important visual metaphor, and it's often helpful in the early stages of learning things when you're asked to produce a program to draw a flowchart of it and then write that flowchart as a program. So here, this is some of our more advanced constructs. And if you understand these three, then basically you've got you're like, it's like half of the course is on this slide. Like applications of this slide are half the course in some way. So you've got selection, if statements, right? If B, then S. So in a program, we specify some condition. These are often called Boolean expression. A Boolean just means results in a true or false value. If it's true, we do one thing. If it's false, we do something else. If you have a if statement like if condition B, then S, which is a direct interpretation of this, if this evaluates to true, then S is executed. Otherwise, nothing is executed. Sorry, it's been a while since I've done 3 hours of lecturing. My poor voice. Jeez. Alternatively, sometimes it's appropriate to do stuff in the negative case. So, an if-else statement allows you to specify some action when the B condition comes out negative, right? So, if we have something like, I think I'll do this in the interpreter. So this is the Python interpreter. Sometimes I'll write programs out like this, but if it's just individual statements, I'll often just do it inside of this command prompt. In Python, anything I enter into this command prompt can be put into a file, and it will work the same way. It's just a little bit more convenient because it immediately shows you what the output is. So if I have x is equal to 8, if x is equal to 8, print yes, else print no. And it prints yes. So it followed this through to this statement, performed that statement, and did not perform this one. Selection. If I did the same thing, but I was looking for a different condition, x is equal to 9, for example, it would print the other, no. We'll get into what this double equal sign means. It's not super important at the moment, but that's a test for equality. So that's how if statements work. Again, this is super important. Yeah. Like, I'm trying to find an analogy to, like, calculus. If statements by the end of this course should be about the same level of, like, second nature to you as simplifying expressions in algebra. You should just be able to do them by rote without thinking too much about them. They just pop out of your head. Loops are a little more difficult, though. So this is a loop. Generally speaking, people are fine with if statements. It's the loops they have trouble with. So loops. While a condition is true, do something, right? So, again, it involves a condition. As long as that condition is true, it performs some statement, and then flow of the program returns to the condition that evaluated to true. And in fact, execution is stuck inside of here until such time as the condition comes out false, in which case execution continues. So the classical example of this is something like while I is less than 10, print I plus equals 1. That'll print you every number between 1 and 9, right? So on the first iteration, I is equal to 0. On the second, it's 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, then 6, then 7, 8, and 9. When it hits... So what's interesting about this is when you come around again to... let me just think for a second. Final I is equal to... There we go. So, I at the beginning of the loop is 0, at the end of the loop it's 1, right? once you get to the final I being 10, like 10 is not less than 10, right? So that makes this condition false, which means that the loop stops looping. So loops will repeat statements until a condition is met and they stop. It is very, very easy to get yourself stuck in what is called an infinite loop. So, for example, if I is equal to 0, while I is less than 10, but I don't increment I don't add 1 to I each time the loop iterates, then you just get 0 forever, right? This is called an infinite loop. Because I is not being modified within the loop, this condition will never be false, right? I will always be less than 10 because I will always be 0. I will always be 0. So, so I had to interrupt it manually. So that's what an infinite loop is. Infinite loops are an extremely common source of software bugs. Infinite loops are a common cause of software crashes, actually. If your program that you're running just stops and it becomes completely unresponsive to input, the likeliest thing that happened is it found itself inside of an infinite loop. Because the thing about an infinite loop is it also occupies the computer's resources that detect inputs, right? Like, the whole computer is stuck doing nothing, but, going through this loop that does nothing. And computers are very stupid, so a computer is happy to do that until it is destroyed by the eventual heat death of the universe. Yeah, so it's 0 because I originally made it 0, and then I did not include anything inside of the loop which modifies the value, right? Because there's nothing in the loop that modifies the value, it never changes, which means that this never changes, which means it just runs forever. So there you go. Thank you, Mark, for answering all of these questions. Yeah. Again, this is like, don't worry too much if you don't get this instantly, right? There is this stuff will come to you through practice, but you have to practice it. Like any math, you have to practice it. It's by practice that you'll learn it. So basic instructions. The basic instruction of flowcharts are those which change the state of the program. So, in general, the basic instructions that we use are assignment operations. It's at this level, it's either assignment or it's print statements. But, as we'll see, print statements are also changing state. They're just changing state external to the operation of the program itself. So yeah, assignment. We say x becomes e. So x is a variable, an algorithmic variable as opposed to an algebraic variable. What we're doing is we're taking the result of the evaluation of some expression e, and we are storing it in x. All right? So if I say x is equal to 3, and I ask for whatever the thing in 3 is, or whatever the thing in x is, it's 3. If I say x is equal to 9 plus 4, x is 13. if I say y is equal to x plus 56, y is 69. If I then assign x to the value of whatever y is, x has the same value. But notice, the fact that x was previously 13 is completely lost. There's no way to know what the previous values of the variable are once they have been overwritten. So, going back to our box analogy, if a variable is a box, then if we put a value into that box, whatever value is currently in the box gets pushed out the bottom of the box and lost forever. It's deleted. It's overwritten. It ceases to be. It is a dead datum. Yeah. So, expressions can be composed of any number of things, right? You can have addition, subtraction, multiplication. This is the asterisk for some reason. Division is slash, and a few more besides. But, in general, expressions follow bedmass rules. So when you compose an expression inside of an algorithm, you're basically following the same rules that you would be in algebra. So, you should put brackets around things that want brackets. So if you want to do, if you want 1 minus 4 to be evaluated first, then you put it in brackets. So that's good. Cool. So the reason that there's a colon here is because this is like math notation. In Python, it's just the equal sign. But, in formal mathematical notation, you put a colon in there. So, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to call a 5-minute break, just a quick 5-minute break, and then we'll get back into it. Okay, gang? Awesome. Oh, no. All right. Oh, boy. Huh. All right. All right. Sorry about that. Oh, boy. All right. You actually... Okay. All right. Let me change the... Oh, boy. Sorry, guys. No... Normally, I'm sort of out of the habit of these types of lecture live streams where I take a break in between. So I perhaps need to be somewhat more, I'm sorry. I'll get on to it. Gosh. All right. Anyway, it's actually not too bad because all I was saying during that time was stuff unrelated to the slides anyways. I will summarize it now. If you don't get this stuff, what you want to do is you want to wait, eventually, hopefully, this material will click for you. The click can't be taught. It has to come from you, and it has to come from you while you work on programming problems. It might come from you listening to lectures, but it's more likely to come from you actually attempting programming problems. The click is when you think like a computer. You have to be able to think like a computer to program a computer effectively. Once you have the click, you'll be able to program at 4 times the speed at least that you were able to program before. So, the goal is to have you guys have programming click for you by the end of the course. That will make you into a programmer. But if you don't, if you're not there yet, then that's fine. This is an introductory level course after all. So, median. This is a flowchart for the median of 3 numbers. So median is defined in the statistical sense, and we're only concerned about doing it for 3 numbers. I'll show you how these guys relate pretty directly to code. This character comments out a line, and it basically turns off a line of the code so that it doesn't execute. Def median x, y, z. If x is less than y, then we go down this branch. If z is less than x, yes, we go down this branch. M is equal to x. Else, so we head back up, then head down the no branch. If z is less than y, m is equal to z, otherwise m is equal to y. Right? Then we can, that's all that taken care of, so we can backtrack all the way up to this condition. Else, if x is less than z, m is equal to x. Else, if z is less than y, m is equal to y. Else, m is equal to z. So there you go. That's this whole program encoded in actual code. Bing, bang, boom. See how easy that was? That's why formulating these problems as a flowchart can really help you aid you in formulating them as an algorithm. Once they're in flowchart form, translating them into a actual programming code is it's a reasonably direct process. I'm going to skip annotation because it's dumb. So what is the maximum number of operations to compute the median of 3 numbers? Analysis. Well, I'm just going to tell you it's 4. 1 operation, 2 operation, 3 operation, 4. The maximum number of operations on any particular branch of this flowchart is 4. So there you go. So here is another problem entirely. Let's see how we... Booking for a vaccine is open. Okay. Like for people that are young? That would be cool. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Seems to be okay. Am I dropping some frames? Okay. Yes. Yeah, everybody... If everybody could please, if everybody could please get your vaccine so that we could get this damn thing over with, I'm sure everybody would appreciate it. Okay. Sometimes this yellow bar shows up when I lose the stream entirely, but it seems like I haven't. So we'll just continue. So, okay. Cool. All right. Yeah, lag happens. It's like the old D&D joke, crit happens. So this is a different algorithm. This is an algorithm for determining the minimum and maximum of a series of inputs. So I'm going to do some stuff with this one when I implement it that, you know, we haven't talked about data structures yet, but this is just kind of a flavor for it for you. So min-max is a function. It takes a series of temperatures, or it actually, I would be internal. So I is equal to 0, because I know it's different from here, but... Well, actually... Yeah, okay. I is equal to 1. Min is equal to t at 0. Max is equal to t at 0. Notice that this is a loop. This condition has a thing that comes down eventually over, around, and top of it, so this is a loop. So while I is less than n, we have this branching if statement. If t at I is less than the minimum, then the minimum becomes ti. So if we are going through each element in this... so this is a series of elements, right? It'll look something like a vector. For those of you who know what vectors are, it'll look something like that. So t is equal to a series of numbers, and they are indexed. They are indexed. If you give a number, it gives you an element back. So t at 0 is this one. T at 1 is this one. It's 0 indexed. So the it starts counting at 0 rather than 1 for computer-specific reasons. So if the element that we're examining is less than the current minimum, we set the minimum to the element we are examining. If the element that if it's not, right? Else, if it's not less than the minimum, perhaps it's greater than the maximum. If the element we're looking at is greater than the maximum, we set the maximum to the element we're looking at, ti. In either event, I is equal to I plus 1. Then when we are finished, we return maximum, minimum. So if we call this min-max, and I'm just going to call this a different thing so that it disambiguates itself from that. So min-max over x. We'll print the value there. Oop, there we go. run the code. We have a syntax error. I forgot the colon. There we go. So a syntax error just means that you messed up the grammar of the language, which normally means you forgot some character or something. N is not defined. Right, because n is... So in this, n is defined as the number of elements in this series of integers. So we can actually, using programming, we can just ask for the length of the data structure. And there you go. So the maximum is 9 and the minimum is 1, as one would expect. If we insert something that's even less in there, it adapts. So there you go. That's how that works. So why is it that... Can't it be if for both? Ah, yes. So it's different, right? What we want to do is we want to take this section of code and repeat it for every element inside of the data structure, right? That means that we're doing repetition, which means that we're using a while construction rather than an if construction. If constructions are just basic selection. It's like, do this or do that. While constructions are keep doing this until the condition is false, right? So keep doing this, do this or that, right? Now, this is, I think, these are important examples because they indicate to you that you can nest these constructions, right? It is possible to have if statements that lead to if statements, and if statements within if statements within if statements. You can also have loops within loops within loops within loops within loops. These control constructions can exist inside of each other as well. And because of that, literally every single program that you have ever seen or executed on a computer, from, Super Mario Brothers all the way to Twitter, all of them can be expressed using only if statements and while loops. If statements, while loops, and, assignment statements, and, the whatever statements you want. Assignment statements, print statements, that sort of thing. In terms of control flow, this is like if statements plus while loops are the minimum necessary set to express all programs. That's an interesting property of computers and computer programs. And the reason for that is that all programs are fundamentally equivalent to Turing machines. If you know Alan Turing, Alan Turing is the venerated granddaddy of computer science as a discipline. And he had this idea of a universal machine that could, perform computations on itself. And, it could modify its own program. And because of that, it's, suffice to say, various researchers have come up with various models of computation over the years, but all of them are, in the end, equivalent to Turing machines. And because they all have Turing machine equivalency, that means any program can be expressed using if statements and while loops, essentially. So if you understand if statements and you understand while loops, you can program any program. It's just everything past here is for convenience, if that makes sense. Once you understand this stuff, everything else we're going to teach you is like things to make things easier, if that makes sense. How many numbers are there in the data set? We can read it directly from the data set by calling the length function on t, which is the input here. But we, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it's 10. Interesting thing, though, if you make this less than or equals instead of just less than, you actually end up with an error. So it's trying to read an element out of the data structure here that doesn't actually exist. So it causes the program to crash rather than perform the way that you want, and that would be a bug. The program crashing is unexpected output in all cases. Cool. So yeah, we can. If you want, we can perform it. I know we're running sort of low on time, but we can perform a trace on this program just to see what's going on. So min is equal to, or actually, you know what? Let's just copy this into Python tutor. That'll be easier. Burp. Python tutor. Reload the page. There we go. So we enter the min-max function. Min gets set to the first element, right? Max gets set to the first element. I gets set to 1. So we enter the loop. We evaluate this if statement. It determines that t at I is less than the minimum, right? So the minimum gets set to 1. I is increased, right? We then evaluate this again to make sure we're still in the loop. We keep going until we hit -1, which is less. We in this case, the maximum element happens to be the first element, so it'll never be updated. But yeah. Oh, so then when we hit the final guy here, the return value is returned. Like these guys are returned to the original print function so that they can be displayed on the screen. We haven't talked about functions and return statements and that sort of thing. Suffice it to say, if functions are concerned with inputs and outputs, you specify inputs by putting them in the brackets up front here, and you specify the output by using a return statement. Whatever comes after return is the output of that function. So because when we use the autograder to mark your assignment solutions, we are comparing the outputs of your functions against expected ones. If your function does not contain a return statement, then it cannot be correct because it has no output. So return statements, very important. Very, very important. Cool. So does I mean the first number in the dataset? No, actually it means the second. So the that's here, let me throw a quick. So if we have a dataset, X is some random numbers, right? The 0th element is 1. The first element is 4. The second you see, it starts numbering at 0, and that's a very important thing. The thing about this algorithm, where does it go? There we go. The thing about this guy is it's not evaluating the first one, because it's using that as the sort of starting off case for that everything gets compared to. So it's actually it's like it takes this one and assigns that to the min and the maximum. Then it goes through each one of these guys and compares it to the established min and max values. So this one is not getting looped over, which is why it's starting at 1. Hopefully that makes things more clear. Yes. Coolio. All right. So we didn't quite make it through this set of slides, but that's okay, because we will continue it tomorrow. Yes. Cool. All right. Thank you very much for your time and attention, folks. If you have any questions about the course, that would be a wonderful thing to put up on Piazza. Also, you can email any of me or the TAs. Everybody's email is up on the syllabus. And yeah, let's make this semester a good one, eh? We can do it. I'm really not surprised that normally with this class, it's difficult for people to get spots in it because it fills up so much. But we have like half this class this semester is only at half capacity, and I understand why. It's like after 8 months of online school, do you really want to go another 2 months of it? Also, we've expanded enrollment over the course of the regular semester, which probably decreases the amount of demand for it in the, sort of... Have I frozen again? I have frozen again. What a pain in the butt. There we go. So, in this particular case, actually, I think you would be fine if you put I as 0. Because it's not technically correct, but it would work out fine just the same, because neither of these conditions would come out, right? Because Ti would be equal to min and max, because it would be 0, right? We can test that. Yeah, see? No change. Meh. How come I'm using Linux? Is it better for programming? Yes. Well, you notice I can just pull up, I've got bound to my keyboard a Linux terminal that I can do all of this fancy coding stuff in. Will I be posting the code from today's lecture? Yeah, I can do that. After lunch. I think I'm going to have lunch today. He says as if he makes a habit of skipping lunch. Never skip meals. Always take the time to eat food. Yeah, no, it's, I don't know. I needed Linux for certain things when I have needed Linux for certain things over the course of my PhD research, so, I don't know, also, people find it interesting, yeah, I just throw it in the Avenue thing. I'll just throw it in the Avenue folder. Yeah. Yeah. Yup. Aren't we all? I mean, you have to kind of be a bit of a masochist to take a computer science course in the first place. Do I play any video games? You betcha. You may have gotten that impression from all of the my waiting playlist. Oh, it's actually it's just a single song actually. It's Alright, what is it here? It's the Claremont Trio's Piano Trio Number 7 in B-flat major Op. 97 by Beethoven. That's what that music is. Cool. All right. So, once again, no tutorials this week. So, I'll see you guys at 9:30 tomorrow morning. Bright and early. Unless you're living in a different time zone, in which case... Yeah. Yeah, if you take a look at... I have been known occasionally to make my own video games. And, if you if you check out my YouTube channel, I've got a trailer for one that I released in January up there. It's not much, but you know, I think it's fun. I think it's a fun little game. Yeah. I'm glad you liked the artwork. I liked it, so I decided to share it. Anyway, take her easy, folks. I'll talk to you again tomorrow. Huzzah!